Hello and welcome back to Massalia Tales. On the last episode, we finally managed to improve our diplomatic relations with many of the other factions, gaining new non-aggression pacts and even trade agreements, also getting peace with the Sessetani. This gave me the confidence to move east and attack the Sequani at Genua, wiping them out and recapturing the settlement, despite moderate losses among our heavy infantry. The Celtic Confederation decided that they wanted Genua as well and came in to challenge Eusebius to battle over the town. He took up a pretty standard defensive formation and despite a fairly bloody battle managed to trap the enemy in a street, bombard them with missiles and eventually cause them to rout and get themselves destroyed attempting to escape from that trap. Then Gelon started to move up to support Eusebius because now we have a chance to take Mediolanum, so he is going to come and team up to begin the assault on that province. However, far to the east where Carpos was expeditioning to find us new trade partners, the Athenians, who for some reason hate us, cornered him with a superior fleet and managed to destroy his small armada, meaning Carpos is now dead. The arrival of the head of Carpos, presented in a gilded box by a smug Athenian diplomat, brought cries of outrage from the Massalian assembly. The Athenian narrowly escaped with his life, later being imprisoned by the city guard to await trial of murder on behalf of his city. The anger at their distant cousins had no proper outlet for most, as few had even heard of Athens before this news spread through the city. Pressing matters closer to home would keep the people's true concerns grounded, but the slight of the Athenians would not be forgotten by Massalia or her growing number of allies. Welcome back. So Carpos has just been defeated, but the tiny bit of good news on top of that is that the Celtic Confederation are pulling forces back from Mediolanum, and then the Sequani do the same. So it looks like Genua is a little safer than it was, and the opportunity to attack Mediolanum is still there. So there's the bad news. Carpos is gone, particularly bad because Carpos was one of our most promising officers. Eusebius has successfully managed to deal with his illegitimate child situation by paying off the mother, and they apparently have disappeared forever, so the situation is resolved, although at extreme cost. We spent something like half of our seasonally income paying off that woman, so she is now astoundingly rich. I guess she had very high demands. Anyway, the other bad news is that Gelon has been sabotaged by an agent and now he doesn't have enough movement points to reach Mediolanum this turn, so my plan to attack it while it's weak can't go right ahead. I'm going to have Eusebius hang around for at least one more turn. So I moved up slightly closer. I'm going to fortify a position on the road between Mediolanum and Genua and make sure that Gelon could reinforce if he is attacked, but the enemy, as we saw there, actually start falling back from Mediolanum even more, so the situation's pretty good. The Reti though are still going to harass my guys with their agents. The only good news we can take from this whole agent thing is that soon we're going to have some tasty revenge, because after taking Mediolanum we'll be one territory away from the Reti lands. The Sequani there right at the end reappear with a fleet from the south, not quite big enough to take Massalia, but it is gunning right for it, so they might try. So that could be something to look forward to in the future. Meanwhile, Mediolanum now just has a single unit standing in it and we have 1.5 stacks of troops ready to attack. I initiate the siege with Gelon. There's two reasons. One is that the smaller force doing the besieging will take fewer losses from attrition, and it leaves my larger force with Eusebius open to go out and take on any reinforcement armies the enemy have standing around or any that come in during the next turn, because I am going to leave Mediolanum under siege. There is actually a fairly good chance of me taking it according to the balance bar. I could auto-resolve the assault and of course could fight it myself, but the losses would be relatively high, and this is a very dangerous position, so I didn't want to take high losses and then immediately be attacked by a full stack of Reti or even Nori troops, for example. So I want to take this place with minimal casualties, and I noticed it only takes 2 turns for Mediolanum to surrender completely, so I am going to just siege them out for now and see how that goes. In the next turn, the situation is still pretty stable, except for the fact that the Sequani have moved their fleet up near to Massalia. I guess they realise they can't attack it, and instead are just going to sit there raiding, and unfortunately, there's nothing I can do about that. I don't have a fleet of my own to attack them. Mediolanum, as you can see, hasn't done anything. It's just remained under siege for a turn, so now it's just 1 turn away from surrender. They haven't sent any forces to help them, and I'm beginning to suspect that the Celtic Confederation don't really have any forces left at this point, so I'm going to wait until next turn and see if we can force them to surrender. In Massalia, I decided I did really need a fleet of some kind, so I decided to hire Homer, a member of the ruling council, to start a new fleet at the city. Of course, there's not much I can do with this fleet. I definitely can't defeat the Sequani fleet, I won't be able to for a long time, but if Massalia is going to rule the Western Mediterranean, we are going to need a powerful fleet, so I'm going to get it started. I'm just going to recruit a few ships to begin with, not going to be enough to take out the Sequani as I said, but possibly to defeat some more minor opponents should they arise. Now as we move into the next turn, the Celtic Confederation forces at Mediolanum decide to sally out, and I guess that's a good decision because this is all they have left. They aren't going to be reinforced. If they can't win here, their town will have to surrender. The balance bar is really far in my favour, but the auto-resolve calculations say I'm going to lose 30%, almost a third of my entire forces here, and I was not willing to tolerate that level of losses against such a weak garrison force, so I'm going to fight this one myself and try and prove the game's calculations wrong. So here we are on the battlefield. Gelon's forces have deployed on top of a nice looking little hill, and he's going to run forward to take advantage of the edge of the hill. The enemy are already advancing towards it with their initial force of just a couple of regiments. Unfortunately, Eusebius is coming onto the field from a really awkward direction, behind the enemy's deployment zone and downhill from where the enemy's reinforcements are coming in, also behind their deployment zone. Meaning Eusebius' army is in a really disadvantageous position that can't really help Gelon either. So the enemy could discharge Gelon's position and Eusebius would be so slow coming up the hill that they would have a good chance to defeat him. However, they decided to form up on top of the hill and face off against Eusebius. Either they were going to defend that position, or they were planning to charge down and attack Eusebius and ignore Gelon. I was preparing for the latter situation by forming up Eusebius' army at the bottom of the hill, trying to get them away from the very edge of the hill so that if the enemy charged down, they wouldn't get too much of a charge bonus. But you can see even where I have put them, it's still a downhill slope. There's actually no flat ground on my side of the map. But of course the enemy are charging towards me, as you can see, so it looks like Gelon's force is going to be left alone whilst the majority of the enemy's infantry charge at Eusebius. They did however send one squad of cavalry towards Gelon's cav, and as you can see here, as they impact with the cavalry, they immediately kill half of my men in the leading regiment. The charge bonus on these enemy cavalry must be huge, and within seconds I've lost the entire regiment. They rout after taking around half casualties, and they'll lose the majority of those men that are left as they try and escape from the enemy's cavalry. Not good at all. At least now I've got the enemy's cavalry pinned down, I can try and slowly kill them, especially with Gelon's cavalry, who are quite elite, very heavy cavalry they're classed as. Inconvenient, I didn't expect that unit of garrison cavalry to be so powerful, but at least now I've learned. The enemy general is moving his swordsman towards that cavalry engagement, but he isn't actually going to engage. He'll turn back soon enough. And Gelon is now moving up to completely outflank the enemy's main force. That's the good part of the enemy ignoring Gelon, as I'm now going to be able to attack them from behind and attack them from downhill, which I'll also be able to do with his cavalry once they finish this engagement. Damn barbarians, it's like they're in league with Eusebius. First they changed the terms of battle to give him all the action, and now they throw their men away just to keep me out of it. Getting command of the vanguard for this campaign cost me more than these dirty savages could muster in a lifetime. I will not let this chance be wasted. Lycus, get back to the men, stop them from following me and just hit the enemy in the flank. We may not be able to fight this battle, but we can still be the ones that win it. Go! Everyone else, unhorse these stinking excuses for warriors. I can't hold my breath against their reek any longer. Now the enemy had one more regiment of those very powerful cavalry who are now charging right down the hill towards the left flank of Eusebius' force. I thought they might try and go for a rear attack, which could be very dangerous and would probably work. However, they decided to charge into my low-level spears. Perhaps a good situation, they might think they could take out these spear units because their charge was so heavy, but actually I take very low casualties even though the charge looked very powerful. And now they've got themselves bogged down. The lightly armed spear units can just come and surround them and will now have a good advantage in melee combat and be able to defeat that cavalry regiment. Meanwhile, the rest of the enemy's main body of infantry are moving up to engage mine. In some cases I'm moving forwards because the enemy does have a lot of missile units. I don't really want to wait around before the fight gets started. So the enemy's charging forces are going to be facing off against my own swordsmen. On the left, here they are anyway. I also have some more Gallic levies rushing in to stop the enemy. Not going to be too good, but good as a screening force at least. The main body of the army was originally screened by these archers who are now falling back, and behind them is the hoplites. These armed townsfolk are going to have absolutely no luck getting past these hoplites, plus they're going to be taking missile fire the whole time. The slight advantage of actually being on a downhill slope is it makes it easier for missile units behind my main line to fire at the enemy, so that's something at least. I'm also moving up a pike phalanx to again plug a gap between the two parts of my line that seem to have been created, and they do very well. On the right flank, the enemy are advancing some of their tribesmen, and I am pushing up my superior spearmen, the hoplites, to face them. The enemy will not be able to break through the hoplites. Plus, because of the way they've charged, I'm able to outflank them on the right here, so I can get at least one unit of hoplites attacking the enemy's flank, and I have plenty of javelinmen and archers to go around the back as well. And speaking of going around the back, Gelon's forces are now arriving, charging down the hill towards the enemy's position. Once they arrive, they're going to do some devastating charge damage. The enemy's cavalry have almost been totally defeated, just one regiment left, which is already at low strength. These archers here, some of which are actually pulling trick shots, firing backwards at the enemy's general, are very exposed but are still fine because the enemy has pretty much ignored them. Their general was chasing them for a while, but has now come to engage with some of Gelon's men. The enemy's archers are doing some damage to me. In fact, the enemy's archers at this point are the biggest threat to my forces because they are taking out my guys as they are pinned down in melee combat. So I want to get rid of those archers as soon as possible if I can. Here on my right flank, the enemy's forces are starting to break. Huge walls of javelins and being outflanked by hoplites is too much for them to take. They're being wiped out. They're only tribesmen, so not particularly good. In the middle, they do have their garrison warriors who are better, but they're taking fire from these missile units behind the line who will be gradually reducing their numbers. So slowly but surely, they will lose morale, even if my hoplites aren't really killing them. The pike phalanx is doing a good job as well. The pike phalanx has been slightly broken up, so you can see some of the guys are fighting with their swords. But as we've seen previously, they're actually pretty good at doing that, so the enemy swordsmen aren't managing to get through them. The left flank's a pretty good situation as well. We've got the enemy very much surrounded, and with Gelon's forces arriving, the situation's getting better and better. His cavalry too are now chasing off some of the enemy's missile units, so that threat has been removed. These hoplites rushing in to attack the enemy in the flank, causing them to rout, means the left flank is now pretty much secure. The survivors from the enemy's forces are going to be wiped out as they try to escape. You can see these guys are trying to escape right through a unit of Gelon's javelinmen who are just cutting them down at point blank range. And once they get really close, they're going to start fighting with them, inflicting many kills on the enemy. There's not much chance of escaping there. So the rest of Gelon's infantry are going to do their thing, hitting the backs of regiments, causing routing all over the place, as you can see, and his cavalry are going to deal with all the missile units. Many of the missile units are skirmishing, running away, and managing not to rout because the cavalry can't quite catch up with them because they're so tired by this point in the battle, but slowly but surely we'll have them all. I also used Gelon to charge the back of the enemy's general regiment. This general regiment isn't a particularly powerful unit, and they are not happy about receiving this heavy cavalry charge, even though it was an extremely slow one, and they decide to get out of there. Excellent news, just a couple of enemy regiments now remain, and they realise this battle is not going their way, and decide to get out of there. The end result is a decisive victory for the Massalian forces. This means that Mediolanum's garrison has been severely depleted, plus since they're only one turn away from surrender, the town is as good as captured. So let's have a little look at the battle results. I was hoping they would be better than the 30% losses result predicted by the auto-resolve, and indeed they were much better than that, under 10% losses for our forces. The enemy force faring much worse than that. The majority of their army defeated. The survivors will not have a chance to fight either because they're going to surrender, as I said. This means it's safe for me to release the captives in an attempt to improve my relations with the remaining Confederation forces. At this point, our relationship doesn't really matter because they are so weak, they probably can't counterattack Mediolanum, or at least they won't be able to for a while. So as we enter the next turn, we get the message that the settlement has been captured, and I have the choice of what to do. I am going to occupy it because Mediolanum is a very valuable centre and is going to be an important stepping stone on our possible road to dominate the area because of its wealth and its powerful military position on the crossroads of so many other provinces. Interestingly, I can use some of its local buildings to upgrade my cavalry, so I'm going to take the opportunity to do that. Thank you to the barbarian buildings for that. I am going to have to eventually get rid of the barbarian buildings to reach the full potential of the city using the Hellenistic building chains, but that's going to be so expensive, and the bonuses from the barbarian buildings are pretty good, meaning that I'm not going to be in a huge rush to actually do that. Although I am going to have to attempt to convert the province's culture soon enough. You can see in the top left, I can't recruit Hellenic units because the culture is so barbarian. It's about 20% Hellenic at the moment. Still, there's a good selection of barbarian units that the Massalian faction is able to recruit, so I can still get some decent forces. And as you can see, I can actually get some siege equipment because of the barbarian workshops in the area. So I thought I might as well go ahead and do that, because it might be a while before I get the opportunity to do that again. So with Gelon building up his forces there in Mediolanum, the only issue to consider is what to do about those two Celtic Confederation armies which are sitting on the border. As I said, it's very unlikely they would attempt a counterattack, but I thought I might as well try and wipe them out. They decide not to stand and fight. The wise choice, they're going to fall back to their final stronghold up in the mountains. I'm not going to bother chasing them for now. I actually did consider chasing them just to attack them and possibly even take their final stronghold now. But you can see the public order situation in Mediolanum is really bad, and in fact they're definitely going to rebel in the next turn. This means I don't really want to be moving my main force away just in case they sneakily capture Genua and then chaos ensues. You can see the public order is going right down to 100 this turn. I wanted to see whether I could untax the province and whether that would make a difference, but it just about wouldn't actually. It's going to go down to exactly 100 next turn without the taxes. So I thought I might as well tax it then and take the money, since it's going to rebel either way. So we're just going to wait for that rebellion to happen. I don't know if it's going to be in Mediolanum or Genua. It could appear in either province. Mediolanum would be better. If they take Genua, there's even a chance they could rush over and take Massalia, although I don't think they will. So with that taken into account, Eusebius is just going to hang around Mediolanum. I'm going to put him on the south side, so if he does need to move south towards Genua, he can do that. We'll just have to see what happens.
The only good Greek is a Greek who has been skinned and repurposed into a range of affordably priced footwear. So say I, the man who the people call the crazed cobbler of Cisalpina. An odd name to be sure, but I've since found the humor in it. I'm sure that guy floating in the well wishes I'd found it a little earlier, but few can deny that my love for shoes of true quality is overshadowed only by my hate of the Massalian fat cats who try every year to impose ludicrous taxes on my innovative products. And now people from all over the province see that the Massalians are not to be trusted. Who better to lead them to war than me? The man who once single-handedly defeated a whole Carthaginian army just so I could make bootlaces from the hair of an elephant's tail. Don't ask me how I did it! But it did involve 2 dresses and a written copy of the Odyssey. Yes, I have no doubt that this land will be ours. The gods of semi-reliable mid-range foot accessories are on our side.
Before I moved on, I had some diplomacy to do, and some good news is that we get trade with the Diorsi. These are the guys to the east of the Rieti, meaning if I can defeat them, my eastern border might actually be safe for once, which would be quite good. I was considering trying to improve my relations with the Lusitani, but then I realised they're at war with the Carthaginians, and I don't really want to be getting into that mess. The Egyptians agree to a non-aggression pact, fairly important because they have a very powerful empire as far as I can tell. They're not going to trade with me, but perhaps one day they will, and that could be very valuable. I'm not going to be able to get non-aggression with the Carthaginians, which is what I really want, but they actually don't hate me all that much, only minus 20 relations, so perhaps there is hope that they won't attack me for now. I was almost going to try and give them some money to get into non-aggression, but they wouldn't accept my paltry sum. I'm also going to be able to get trade with Rhodos, not particularly important. It's still nice to have that trade partner. That will slightly boost my income and mean there's another Greek city-state on our side. I also wanted to see if I could get peace with Athens. I have no reason to be at war with them. I would rather be trading with them, but for whatever reason they still won't accept peace even though they are neutral towards me. So that's the end of my diplomacy, getting better I think than it has been previously. As they go into the next turn, the rear team managed to get one of their agents wounded trying to scheme against Eusebius, so that's fine news. And as expected, there is a rebellion, but unfortunately it's in Genua rather than Mediolanum, so it's slightly out of reach for now. It is only 4 units to begin with though, upgraded units, but since they're only tribesmen, I'm not too worried about them. They probably wouldn't be able to take Genua this turn or even next turn. So I decided I'm going to do a little bit of a gamble and just leave them for now. Allow them to build up their rebellion. As long as the rebellion is building up, the public order in the province will be improving due to discontents going to join the rebellion. And while that's happening, I'm going to try and finish off the Celtic Confederation for good. First, Gelon goes to besiege their settlement of Octojuron in the mountains there. Now, Eusebius can move up to attack the 2 armies they had standing next to the settlement, and because the settlement was besieged, the large garrison force they had there will not be able to help their allies outside the town, so Eusebius can quickly chase them off. So they disappear off north of the town, and now Eusebius is able to reinforce Gelon, meaning that when I initiate the battle, the balance of power is very far in our favour. Actually not as far as I thought it would be, but still pretty good. So I'm interested in an auto resolve. I saw that one option is going to give me a 70% plus survival rate, which I'm okay with because the forces will regenerate very quickly after the battle because they're stationed in a town, so I was willing to take some losses to capture this area. The losses actually were pretty heavy, especially in Eusebius' army, which I wasn't really expecting. I thought they'd be mostly in Gelon's army, which is unfortunate, but not too bad. We can see the Sequani have forces currently moving in my direction. We now border with their territory, so I can almost guarantee a Sequani counter-invasion of Octojuron coming soon. So I decided I'd leave Gelon there for now, and in the near future, in order to defend that area. Interestingly, we saw there the Celto-Iberian Confederation is attacking the Pictones. Not so important anymore, but good to know my old enemy might just get wiped out. Now I'm moving Eusebius to a position where he can reinforce both Mediolanum and Genua at the same time, meaning if the Reati attack Mediolanum from the north or east, he'll be able to help out, and if the rebels attack Genua, he'll be able to help there as well, although he may not be needed. We'll see what does happen next time on Massalia Tales. Gelon's agents at home had the council leader Melanthios backed into a corner with evidence of his planned betrayal of the city. Gelon chose to use this power to cast Melanthios as a puppet for his own ambition, reversing their decade-long roles in an instant. With Melanthios' influence, he was able to secure a larger personal army, still just the city guard on paper, and the right to lead a campaign through Mediolanum into the Alps. Eusebius watched carefully as Gelon's power grew, but stayed his own hand, seeing that Gelon's lust for conquest was not unlike the desire that had driven his own mentor Zenon to his death.